coming up.
O Brasil, graças sobretudo à floresta amazônica, é em grande parte responsável pelo equilíbrio climático do planeta.
Brazil's president makes ambitious promises to reverse the mess his predecessor left in the Amazon rainforest, but he's got a big fight ahead of him. Is Lula cutting ties with the livestock industry? How is he planning to reduce deforestation?
The agricultural sector in Brazil, they are very powerful politically as well.
Keep it in the ground, let's keep it in the ground.
Environmentalist Greta Thunberg says the climate crisis needs our undivided attention and accused those in power of acting in their own interests.
They are failing us here in this room, they are failing our children, they are failing all of humanity.
But first,
there is no space for procrastination.
Things get heated at a UN Security Council meeting. Ambassadors argue over whether the peace and security body should address global warming.
关于气候与安全之间的关系，安理会多次开会进行讨论，显然存在着意见分歧，还需要深入的探讨。
My friends, there is no legitimate debate.
This is Just 2 Degrees on TRT World. Hey, what do you know about the United Nations Security Council? Well, it's a multinational organization responsible for international peace and security, and it responds to global crises by aiding in ceasefires and political settlements and peace processes. But there was an intense debate at the UNSC in mid-June about whether there's a relationship between armed conflicts and the climate crisis. Take a listen to some of these speeches. I've got to tell you, they sent chills down my spine.
It's now indisputable that the climate crisis is one of the top security threats, not just to the developed world, but to the entire planet, to life on the planet itself. And it is a crisis that already today costs countries billions of dollars each year, which we spend not even to prevent at this point, but just to clean up the mess.
伊拉克面临着缺水、干旱和荒漠化等生态挑战，这同气候变化也有一定关联。但伊拉克最主要的挑战是外来入侵带来的严重后果。多年战乱，包括外部势力使用贫油弹，导致伊拉克生态环境发生难以修复的变化。战争遗留物使得大量土地无法使用。在安理会工作中引入气候变化视角，如果忽视这些根源性问题，就把握不准解决问题的正确方向，也不可能产生应有的效果。
My friends, there is no legitimate debate. There is no space for procrastination. And how many issues that the Security Council considers can you say that of? There's no room for debate on the science here. The crisis is growing, it's undermining our collective peace and security.
Honorable John Kerry тоже говорил о финансировании. Осуществление решений по наполнению фонда ликвидации потерь и ущерба на КОП-28 будет реальной лакмусовой бумажкой готовности вносить вклад в борьбу с негативными последствиями изменения климата, а не дискуссии в Совете Безопасности. Да, в каких-то страновых и региональных ситуациях климатический элемент может быть дополнительным фактором усугубления конфликтной ситуации. Однако Российская Федерация последовательно придерживается позиции, что обсуждение изменения климата не входит в мандат Совета, а лишь отвлекает внимание от первостепенных, зачастую социально-экономических причин конфликтов.
There's no finding peace for the 7 million people a year who die around the world from the impact of greenhouse gas pollution. Pollution. We fail to call it pollution as frequently as we should, I think, because that's what it is. And without action, the climate crisis destruction costs will go up and the spread of its impacts will grow. It is fair to say that the world we experienced last year will be a better world than the one we're going to experience this year or for the foreseeable future, unless we do a better job of attacking the crisis itself. And the cost will rival the cost of many wars, even those being fought today.
The correlation between climate change and threats to peace and security was challenged by some, questioning the aptness of the Security Council as a venue to foster and expedite climate actions. The contours of this debate were established, which, despite the passage of 16 years, has seen little evolution. Nevertheless, the threat of climate change as a risk multiplier is no longer a hypothetical scenario. It is a daily lived reality in various conflict settings around the world. Scientific studies have delineated the complex relationship between vulnerability, climate change, and armed conflict, and how these elements can form a destructive cycle.
关于气候与安全之间的关系，安理会多次开会进行讨论，显然存在着意见分歧，还需要深入的探讨。
While China's ambassador says more discussions were needed about whether the Security Council should play a role in tackling climate issues, the situation is all too apparent to Greta Thunberg. The world's most famous young environmentalist thinks all hands need to be on deck. She took part in her final school strike for climate change after graduating high school. Well, in 2018, the 20-year-old began to protest every Friday in front of Sweden's parliament. Her solo protest went on for 251 weeks before the end and made her a symbol of youth taking part in the anti-fossil fuels fight. It also inspired movements around the world under the banner of Fridays for Future and School Strike for Climate. And Greta's promise to continue the good fight at the Climate Summit in Bonn, Germany, she slammed governments for failing to take responsibility.
The political will is nowhere to be seen. The people in power are spending their time looking for false solutions and finding and creating loopholes which maintains business as usual and keeps them in the position of power. And the truth now is that these processes are failing. They are failing us here in this room, they are failing our children, they are failing all of humanity and the future generations to come, but most importantly, they are failing the people bearing the brunt of this crisis today and have been for the last decades.
Well, let's talk about one of the many issues activists have been raising: PFAS. These are chemicals used in products that resist heat, oil, and water. They're also used to make fluoropolymer coatings, which give things like furniture and non-stick cookware their smooth, slick coating. And they also provide corrosion resistance. There are thousands of different PFAS, and many of them make life for us a whole lot easier, but using them may come at a cost. You can be exposed to PFAS by drinking contaminated water or eating food packaged in material that contains the substance. Because the components of PFAS break down very slowly, they remain for long periods in the environment. They can move through soil and pollute the hydrosphere. There's still testing being done to determine what effect certain levels of PFAS have on humans, but studies suggest there could be development delays in children and an increased risk of long-term illnesses, including prostate, kidney, and testicular cancers. So this year's report from the Renewable Energy Policy Network for the 21st Century, or REN21, shows renewable energy on the rise at a record 30%. The report links the growth to the long-term policy attention that enabled market and technology development and drove down costs.
The executive director of REN21 is with me now on Just 2 Degrees.
Hi, Rana. It's good seeing you again.
Hello, hi, how are you? Thanks for...
Your organization, REN21, which is an international renewables energy network, has published its renewables in energy supply module of its annual global renewables status report. What does it say about where the world is today in terms of the transition away from fossil fuels?
So indeed, when we're looking into the energy is supplied in form of heat, in form of fuels, and in form of electricity. And when we're looking on the electricity part, this is actually where we have another record year. So this really results in the fact that 30% of the electricity provided today globally is building on renewable energy. And this is mainly driven by photovoltaics, but also by wind. So photovoltaics and wind represent 92% of the electricity actually provided here. That's fabulous because we really have a record increase. What is, however, challenging about this number is that electricity only represents 23% of the energy that is provided. Heat and fuels represent 49% and 29%. And here the share of renewable energy is of only 10% approximately for heat and not even 4% for transport, so for the fuels. And this clearly means that there are sectors that lag behind massively.
And Rana, your report talks about deficiencies in policy and unequal investment levels in different regions, indicating, I guess, that the global south is still far behind the rest of the world when it comes to renewables. But why is that?
So this is very clear for the reason, first of all, the policy and regulatory frameworks. In terms of policy imbalances, there is an imbalance because the attention has globally really been on the power sector only, mainly. So we had like 174 countries that had renewable power targets, for instance, and only 46 countries renewable heat targets and 49 countries renewable fuel targets. So this is one policy imbalance. The other one is, however, when we're looking at the developing countries, investment is attracted when you have like policy targets, policy and regulatory frameworks, and also stability. And we see that in particular in 2022, in response to climate change for one, but clearly to the energy crisis, there have been massive policy packages in the European Union, in the US, and China since many years is already in a leading position. So the investment in renewable electricity and in fuels are really concentrated here, with 55% happening in China, followed by the EU with 11%, the US with 10%. And to take the other example or the other extreme, we have only 1.6% of the investment in Africa and Middle East. A big challenge here is first, as I said, the policy and regulatory frameworks, the stability, but in particular, when we're looking to the African continent, also the question about access to finance. It is very clear that this is one of the key barriers that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed even more so because 700 million people still do not have access to electricity, and these are mainly located in Africa and Southeast Asia.
All right, we'll continue following this. We really appreciate your work, and we love having you on Just 2 Degrees. Thank you so much for your time, Rana.
Thank you.
After Brazil, Peru has the second largest section of rainforests in the Amazon, and its forests are also in serious need of protection. Here's a look at how new technology is helping organizations do just that.
The Amazon forest. Efforts to protect it have a long way to go to restore what's been destroyed by illegal mining, farming, fishing, and logging.
Every day, many people do mining around this region, and then they do hunting, and also they do get wood, loggers, so many loggers every day. You can't imagine how many trees goes for logging every day. It's really heartbreaking when you see it.
The Global Forest Watch report from the World Resources Institute observed that Peru lost more than 36,000 square kilometers between 2001 and 2021. But a pilot project using a robot donated by Zurich-based ABB Robotics is helping to sow the seeds of new growth. Non-profit conservationists The Jungle Keepers says it could be a game changer in the fight against rainforest destruction.
This robot is incredibly agile, and it's able to plant all of our seeds for our nursery, freeing up our rangers to do other tasks involving the reforestation project itself. The robot is able to remove soil and plant seeds all in one box, 16 at a time, and then we take that box and put it into our nursery for it to germinate.
The robot can plant 600 specimens in one morning. That can fill 2 soccer fields worth of deforested area with fresh trees. And Jungle Keepers is looking at adding more to the fight to increase that to thousands a day, while working with local communities and indigenous Peruvian rangers to patrol, protect, and replant the Amazon.
We're entirely inspired by the indigenous people that work to start conserving this river, and we've teamed up with a great group of people to protect the watershed.
Protecting the Amazon rainforest is key to the fight against climate change because it absorbs and traps huge quantities of the carbon dioxide that increases global warming. But there's a long way to go to ensure it's around for future generations.
The Amazon is in danger. It's not safe. It is in danger. But that's why the technology, the science, and local knowledge, we have to work together in order to save the Amazon.
Sarah Balter, Just 2 Degrees.
Now to Brazil, where destruction of the Amazon reached historic levels under the former president, Jair Bolsonaro. His policies encouraged development, slashed the Environment Ministry's budget, and weakened environmental protections, leading to a 60% increase in deforestation in the Amazon. But the current president, Lula da Silva, has pledged to protect the so-called lungs of the earth.
During Lula's first terms in presidency between 2004 and 2011, deforestation of the Amazon went down nearly 75% due to his close work with Environmental Minister Marina Silva, and he has reappointed her to the same position. At the start of his third term in office, da Silva signed 7 executive orders to control deforestation in the Amazon. This included reinstating the governing body of a $1.2 billion fund from Germany and Norway to protect the rainforest. Donations were suspended 3 years ago over concerns about deforestation under Bolsonaro, but are flowing again under da Silva. Another executive order moved the registration of land ownership from the Agriculture to the Environment Ministry, tightening controls and levying fines on illegal deforestation. Brazil's National Institute for Space Research reported a nearly 70% drop in deforestation levels after Lula had been in office for 4 months. Da Silva has announced an ambitious new plan to end deforestation in the Amazon by 2030, including creating reservations, confiscating illegally claimed land, increasing law enforcement fighting environmental crimes, and promoting economic alternatives to deforestation.
Well, joining us to share his expertise is Carlos Nobre, a senior researcher at the University for Advanced Studies at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. Professor, it's good seeing you. How are you?
Okay, I'm fine. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Of course, not a problem. You know, I hate to bring up Jair Bolsonaro again, but I remember when he was president, he promised to open up the Amazon for business, and he gave free rein for forest destroyers to make room for cattle. But is Lula cutting ties with the livestock industry? How is he planning to reduce deforestation? How is he doing it?
Well, 90% of the first deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon is for cattle ranches. However, the productivity of the cattle ranches in all of Brazil, but particularly in the Amazon, is very, very low. Average is 1.3 heads of cattle per hectare. It could be 2, 3, 4 times more productive, the livestock farming in the Amazon. So therefore, it's possible to have a more regenerative livestock farming using much, much less. There is more than 300,000 square kilometers of highly degraded pasture. So therefore, what President Lula is promising now is a new plan for protection, conservation of the Amazon, in which there will be the development of a new bioeconomy we call standing forest bioeconomy. So it's not the expansion of pastures for cattle ranches. On the contrary, it's getting a lot of areas already degraded in cattle ranches and start a big forest restoration as well. So this is the way to go. And also this new bioeconomy is not for the livestock farming, not for beef. It's for the products coming from the Amazon biodiversity.
Interesting. He has promised to reduce deforestation to zero, but further along that point, what is his relationship with the owners of the very lucrative and powerful beef industry in Brazil?
Well, again, as I said, yes, the agricultural sector in Brazil, they are very powerful politically as well. The agricultural sector is also important economically. Something like 23% of GDP in Brazil comes from the agricultural sector, including primarily the cattle, the livestock farming, the beef industry. 7% of GDP is beef in Brazil. So anyway, politically, of course, they are also very powerful in Brazilian Congress. However, as I said, modern livestock farming uses much less land. Okay. So there is no need to keep expanding. So let's move towards a regenerative agriculture in Brazil.
All right, point taken, Professor. Just have about 1 minute with you. There's a trade deal being finalized between the European Union and Mercosur, which is, of course, a group of countries that include Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil. But we understand Lula is concerned about an addendum to the trade deal, which he thinks could lead to sanctions if they weren't complied with. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I mean, certainly the agricultural sector in Brazil, they are complaining about the European Union legal framework, because the European Union framework is for zero deforestation all over the planet, including in Europe, no export of European products coming from deforestation. That has to be true in all of the forests in the planet, including tropical forests, including the Amazon. It should not really be making a distinction between legal versus illegal deforestation. Because unfortunately in Brazil, the Brazilian Congress has legalized a lot of deforestation which was originally done illegally. So it's correct. The legal framework in Europe is correct. Zero deforestation, all forests on the planet, to combat the climate emergency.
All right, Professor Carlos Nobre, really appreciate you talking with us here on Just 2 Degrees. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to India now, which has a rainforest of its own and one that's also in danger. Between 2015 and 2020, India lost more than 668,000 hectares of jungle, and its rate of deforestation is growing at an alarming rate. However, a project started in the early 70s to save the Bengal tiger could also change the country's deforestation destiny. This next report was written and produced by Just 2 Degrees producer Betul Ulutuk and voiced by Taibe Aiden.
The Bengal tiger is back from the brink. In 1973, with species on the verge of extinction, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi launched a campaign to save them. Now, on the 50th anniversary of the Tiger Project, more than 3,000 are thriving in its reserves. That's more than 70% of all the wild tigers in the world. India's 54 tiger reserves cover 75,000 square kilometres. Although focused on tiger numbers, the project also saved forests. The study published in the journal Nature, Ecology and Evolution says vast tracts of forest and mangroves have been saved by the tiger conservation effort. And those forests absorb more than 1 million tonnes of carbon every year. Ullas Karanth of India, a leading tiger biologist, says an estimated 380,000 square kilometres of potential habitat exists in India. And if the country manages them properly, it could be a win-win situation for both big cats and the climate.
And we end this episode of Just 2 Degrees with examples of the Amazon rainforest's rich biodiversity. Hope to see you next time. Bye.